Somewhere between the day you just lived and the sleep waiting to take you, there is a frequency. You won't find it on any dial. It doesn't broadcast on a schedule. It comes when the hour is late and the lights are low, and you are ready to go somewhere without leaving where you are. This is the midnight frequency. What follows are radio dramas, some set in the smoky, rain-soaked world of the old golden age, where private detectives walked dark streets and every shadow had a secret. Some take place closer to now, some venture further out, into times and places that haven't happened yet. All of them are original stories, written in the spirit of the programs that once kept the whole country listening in the dark. From this moment forward, there are no interruptions, no commercials, nothing to pull you back. If you found something here worth returning to, we'd be grateful for your support. The details are in the show notes, but that's for later. Right now, there is only the story. Get comfortable. Let it come.
Maltese Emerald. An old-time radio drama in the style of Philip Marlowe. They say Los Angeles has two seasons. The dry season, when the city bakes under a sun that doesn't care about anyone. And the wet season, when the rain comes down like God is trying to wash the whole sorry place clean and hasn't figured out yet that some stains don't wash out. It was the wet season. A Tuesday night in November, 1947. The kind of night that kept decent people indoors and sent the other kind to find someone like me. My name is Jack Malone. I keep an office on the 4th floor of the Bradbury Building on Spring Street. The frosted glass on my door says Malone Investigations in letters that need repainting. Inside, there's a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet with a stuck drawer, and a bottle of rye that was 3/4 full this morning and wasn't anymore. That's the complete inventory of my professional life. I was sitting behind the desk, watching the rain make rivers on my window and thinking about nothing in particular, which was my specialty. Then I heard the heels. They came down the hallway like a metronome, counting time in a key nobody else was playing in. Slow, deliberate. The walk of a woman who knew exactly where she was going and wanted you to have time to think about it before she got there.
Mr. Malone.
She wasn't asking. She already knew. The sign on the door gave me away.
The bottle of rye and the expression of a man with nowhere better to be. The sign was supplementary evidence.
I looked up then. I always did. Eventually. She was worth the eventually. Tall, in a black dress that had cost more than my month's rent and knew it. Hair the color of good coffee. Pinned up in a way that suggested it could come down at the right moment. And eyes. Jade green eyes that had seen things and hadn't looked away. She was carrying a small purse and a secret. I could tell about the purse because I could see it. I could tell about the secret because of the way she was holding herself, the specific, careful posture of a person managing information. Sit down, Miss
Cortez. Vivian Cortez.
Drink, Miss Cortez.
Please.
You came a long way in the rain to sit in my office. What can I do for you?
My employer has lost something. Something of considerable value. She would like it found quietly, without involving the police.
Most people who come to me want things found quietly without involving the police. The ones who want the police involved generally go to the police. What's the item?
An emerald.
1 emerald.
The Marchetti Emerald. Perhaps you've heard of it.
I had. Everybody in Los Angeles with a subscription to any newspaper had. The Marchetti Emerald was 42 carats of Colombian green that had been in the Marchetti family for 3 generations, since old Carmine Marchetti brought it from Rome in 1901. It had been appraised at $60,000. It had been displayed at the Los Angeles County Museum the previous spring, and it had been stolen from the Marchetti estate in Hancock Park approximately. I looked at my watch. The Marchetti robbery was reported this morning. That means your employer waited 12 hours before coming to me.
She had other inquiries to make first.
What kind of inquiries?
The kind that didn't produce results.
Tell me about the theft.
Mrs. Marchetti held a small dinner party last evening. 6 guests. The emerald was displayed in its case in the study, as it occasionally is for guests of particular distinction. Sometime between 8 in the evening and 11, when the last guest departed, the emerald disappeared from the case. The case was not broken. The window was not forced. There was no sign of entry from outside.
Meaning someone at the dinner party took it?
That is the uncomfortable conclusion, yes.
Who were the guests?
Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Pemberton, Judge Raymond Haas and his wife Constance, and 2 business associates of Mrs. Marchetti's late husband, a Mr. DeLuca and a Mr. Hennessey.
The last 2 names sat in my office like uninvited guests at a party, Tommy DeLuca and Dutch Hennessey. I knew them by reputation, which was the only way anyone who wanted to stay healthy knew them. DeLuca was a fence, a small, nervous man who moved stolen goods from the people who stole them to the people who bought them without asking questions. Dutch Hennessey was the other kind of associate, the kind that made problems go away by making the people who caused the problems go away. What they were doing at Elena Marchetti's dinner table was an interesting question. DeLuca and Hennessey were friends of the late Mr. Marchetti.
Business associates.
Right. What business was Mr. Marchetti in?
Import and export.
Sure he was. How much is Mrs. Marchetti willing to pay to get her emerald back?
She will pay $500 for its recovery. She will pay a further $500 if it is recovered without scandal. She is 71 years old, Mr. Malone. The emerald was her husband's last gift to her. The money is secondary.
I looked at those jade eyes and I believed her. About Mrs. Marchetti's feelings anyway. About everything else I was going to need some time. I'll take the case, Miss Cortez.
One more thing, Mr. Malone.
There always is.
The police were told the emerald was misplaced, not stolen. Mrs. Marchetti does not want them investigating her guests. If you find the emerald through means that require involving Captain Brodie's people...
You'd rather I didn't?
We'd rather you succeeded without it becoming necessary.
I'll do my best.
I know you will. That's why I came in the rain, Mr. Malone.
I sat back down behind my desk and poured myself the drink I'd been pretending I wasn't going to pour. Tommy DeLuca and Dutch Hennessey at a widow's dinner party. The Marchetti Emerald missing from a locked case with no sign of forced entry, and a woman with jade eyes showing up in my office at 9 on a rainy Tuesday instead of noon on a dry Wednesday, which meant the other inquiries she'd mentioned hadn't just failed, they'd failed badly. Somewhere in Los Angeles, somebody had a $60,000 emerald and a very short clock. I put on my coat and went to find Tommy DeLuca. Tommy DeLuca kept an office above a pawn shop on Cahuenga, which was appropriate since the pawn shop was one of his primary business operations, the legitimate face on a collection of enterprises that Captain Brodie's people had been trying to shut down for 11 years without notable success. The building smelled of mildew and old transactions. I went up the back stairs, which were the stairs you used when you didn't want the man at the front counter to make a phone call. The light was on under DeLuca's door. I knocked.
We're closed. Come back tomorrow.
It's Malone, Tommy. Open up before I decide to knock louder.
Malone? What the... Hold on. Malone. Hey! Jack Malone in person. How about that? Come in. You want something? I got coffee.
I don't want anything, Tommy. I want to ask you something.
Sure, anything. What do you need? I'm an open book. Everybody knows Tommy DeLuca is an open book.
Tommy, the last time you were an open book, somebody tore out half the pages.
Ha. That's funny, Malone. What do you want?
I want to talk about last night, the Marchetti dinner.
I don't know anything about any emerald.
I hadn't mentioned an emerald. I didn't ask about an emerald, Tommy.
I heard... Look, everybody in town heard about the Marchetti thing. It was on the radio this morning.
The radio said it was misplaced, not stolen.
Right. Misplaced. That's what I heard.
Then why did you go straight to the emerald?
Geez, Malone.
Talk to me, Tommy. I'm working for Mrs. Marchetti. She wants the emerald back. No questions asked. No police. Whoever returns it walks away clean.
I can't.
Can't what?
Can't talk about it. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not being coy. There are people involved in this thing that I don't.
Dutch Hennessey.
You didn't hear that from me.
Dutch took the emerald.
I didn't say that.
What did Dutch want with a $60,000 stone? He's not a fence. That's your department.
He came to me after the dinner, real late, like 2 in the morning. He had the stone. He wanted me to move it. I told him...
You told him what?
I told him I couldn't move something that hot. Not the Marchetti stone. Everybody knows that stone. You can't sell it domestic. You'd have to take it apart. And even then, the main stone is 42 carats. I told him it would take time. Contacts. He didn't like that.
Where's Dutch now?
Malone, if Dutch finds out I talked to you...
Where is he, Tommy?
He's got a place. Out in Boyle Heights, warehouse on 6th Street. But Malone, Dutch didn't just take the emerald.
What else did he take?
He took it because somebody paid him to. Somebody paid Dutch Hennessey to go into that dinner party and lift that specific stone. And the person who paid him They didn't pay him because they wanted to sell it,
Why did they want it?
because of what's inside it.
What's inside a 42-carat emerald, Tommy?
Old Carmine Marchetti wasn't just an import and export, Malone. You know that. What you might not know is that before he came to this country back in Rome, he was holding things for people. Documents, account numbers, the kind of information that gets people killed. He had it all put on microfilm, real small, and he had it put inside the Marchetti Emerald in a tiny cavity in the base of the setting. His insurance policy. 40 years he held on to it, and nobody ever moved against him because everybody was afraid of what he might release.
And now he's dead.
And now somebody wants that microfilm.
Who hired Dutch?
I don't know. I swear on my mother's grave, Malone. Dutch didn't tell me, and I didn't ask because asking questions like that is how a person ends up in the river. That's the second time it's rung in the last 10 minutes. I haven't been picking up.
Pick it up.
Malone.
Pick it up, Tommy.
Hello? Nobody there.
We both understood what nobody there meant. It meant somebody knew I was in Tommy DeLuca's office. It meant the clock, which had already been short, had just gotten shorter. Stay here tonight, Tommy. Don't go home. Don't call anyone. Don't. The shot came from across the street and took out the window 6 inches above where Tommy had been standing. The glass came down like expensive rain. Tommy was on the floor, not shot, just wise enough to fall down when shooting started, which was the survival skill of a man who had been in proximity to violence his whole career. You hit?
No. No, I don't think... No.
Stay down. I hit the alley behind the building at a run and came around to Cahuenga in time to see a black sedan pulling away from the curb with its lights off. I got 4 letters of the plate before it turned north and the rain took it. 4 letters were better than nothing. Not as good as the whole plate, but that was the story of this case so far. Enough to see the shape of the thing, not enough to name it. I went back inside to tell Tommy to find somewhere safe to sleep and to remind myself that I was being paid $500 to retrieve a stolen emerald and had somehow gotten involved in a 40-year-old conspiracy involving microfilm, an organized crime dinner party, and a man who shot at windows in the rain. The rye bottle on my desk seemed further away than it had ever seemed. The warehouse on 6th Street in Boyle Heights looked like every other warehouse on every other street in that part of town, which is to say it looked like a place where things happened that people would prefer not to be specific about. Big, dark, the kind of industrial building that the city had built in the 20s to hold things and had kept for the same purpose, the contents merely changing with the decades. A light showed in a high window. I went around the back. The inside of the warehouse was half dark, crates stacked on the left, an open space in the middle. And in the middle of the open space, under a single hanging light, Dutch Hennessey was sitting in a chair, going through what appeared to be paperwork with the focused attention of a man who was not expecting company. Dutch Hennessey was 6'4" and 250 pounds, and had a face that had stopped being surprised by anything sometime around 1935. He heard me come in. Dutch always heard things. It was a professional requirement. And looked up without the expression that most people would have in that situation, which was alarm. Dutch's expression was the expression he always had, which was mild and attentive and vaguely terrible.
Malone.
Dutch.
You're a long way from Spring Street on a wet night.
I had an interest that brought me out. You know how it is.
I know that a man who walks into my warehouse uninvited has either more courage than sense, or more information than I'm comfortable with. Which is it?
Little of both, probably. I'm looking for something that went missing from the Marchetti house last night.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Sure you do, Dutch. 42 carats, Colombian origin, the kind of green that makes people do things they'd rather not answer for. Tommy DeLuca sends his regards.
You talked to Tommy.
Somebody put a bullet through his window while I was there. Someone who knew I was there, which means someone was watching Tommy, which means whoever hired you is tying off their loose ends.
Nobody hired me.
Then you're branching out from your regular work into gemstone theft purely as a hobby. I find that hard to believe, Dutch.
You should go home, Malone. This isn't your weight class.
Maybe not, but I've got a 71-year-old woman who wants her husband's last gift back, and apparently whatever's inside it is causing enough trouble that someone is taking shots at people in the rain, so I'm inclined to see it through.
What do you know about inside it?
Enough.
The woman who hired me told me it was a simple retrieval. Said the emerald was hers by right of certain debts owed and that the old lady had been sitting on it too long. She said nothing about microfilm. She said nothing about...
Who hired you, Dutch? The heels I'd heard once before that evening, the same metronome pace, the same quality of deliberation. I turned around.
I'm sorry, Mr. Malone.
She was holding a small pistol that matched the purse it had presumably come out of. Both were expensive and purposeful. You hired Dutch.
I'm afraid so.
You came to me to slow things down, find out how much the police knew, find out if Mrs. Marchetti had other plans.
You're very quick. It was a recommendation.
The microfilm, what's on it?
My father's name. And the names of 20 men who worked with him. Carmine Marchetti had that information for 40 years as insurance against the people my father worked for. My father is dying, Mr. Malone. If those names come out after he goes, if Marchetti's widow decides to use what's in that stone for leverage, or sells it to someone who will...
You were protecting your father.
I still am.
She's going to ask me to deal with you, Malone. I want you to know I'd rather not.
It won't work. The shot through Tommy's window, that was your man.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, you don't. Which means there's someone else in this room we can't see yet. Someone who also wants that microfilm and isn't interested in protecting your father. Someone who wants what's on it for leverage of their own. It happened fast. A figure from the shadows behind Dutch, someone who'd been there the whole time, patient in the dark, took Dutch at the knees with something heavy, and Dutch went down like a building being demolished. Vivian's shot went into the rafters, and in the confusion I crossed the 10 feet between us and got the gun. The figure straightened up from Dutch, and I found myself looking at a face I hadn't expected. Captain Brody.
Malone, you want to put my officer's weapon down?
Your officer's weapon was pointed at me about 30 seconds ago.
Miss Cortez is a complicated situation. Put the gun down.
How long have you been in here?
Long enough. We've had DeLuca's phone tapped for 6 months. When your name came up on his line tonight, I decided to follow the interesting thread.
You knew Brody was following you?
I suspected.
Dutch is fine. Hard head. Miss Cortez. The Emerald.
You let it happen.
You led us to Dutch. Dutch would have led us to the stone. The stone leads us to the microfilm. And the microfilm has names on it that we've been trying to document for a decade.
You don't care about my father.
Miss Cortez, your father is dying. I'm sorry about that. But the names on that microfilm belong to men who are not dying. Men who have been operating in this city for 40 years under Carmine Marchetti's protection. And now that Marchetti is gone, they need new protection. That's what this is about, not your father.
Where's the emerald now?
In a pocket. Left side.
Dutch produced the Marchetti Emerald from inside his jacket and set it on a crate in the warehouse on 6th Street, and the single overhead light caught it, and for a moment, none of us said anything. 42 carats of Colombian green, the color of deep water, in a place the sun hadn't reached in years. The weight of 40 years of history in a stone small enough to fit in a man's breast pocket. The microfilm is in the setting.
My people can extract it without damaging the stone.
And the stone goes back to Elena Marchetti.
That was always the plan.
Was it?
The old woman doesn't know what her husband put in that stone, doesn't know what those names mean or what they have protected over the years. She just knows it was his last gift. I'm not in the business of taking last gifts from 71-year-old women, Malone. Even in this department. Tell them to wait outside.
Your father.
My father made his choices a long time ago. I made mine tonight. I suppose we both have to live with them.
The charges?
Miss Cortez provided material assistance to an ongoing investigation. Her role in the recovery of the emerald and the microfilm will be characterized appropriately.
It was the most honest, dishonest thing I'd ever heard Captain Brody say. In Brody's language, characterized appropriately meant she'd walk. It meant he needed her more whole than prosecuted. And maybe it meant something else, something in the way he'd said your father is dying that wasn't entirely without humanity. I looked at the emerald on the crate. I looked at Vivian Cortez with her jade eyes and her exhausted composure and her father's name on a piece of microfilm inside a dead man's stone. I looked at Dutch Hennessey on the floor, doing the arithmetic of a man deciding that cooperation was the favorable position. I put the gun on the crate next to the emerald. My client gets the stone back tonight.
Tonight.
And my invoice gets paid tomorrow.
Your invoice. Sure, Malone. Bill the department. See how that goes.
I returned the Marchetti Emerald to Elena Marchetti at 7 in the morning. She was already up, the way old people were up before the rest of the world remembered it needed to be. She was sitting in a chair in the study of the house in Hancock Park, in a dressing gown, with the particular stillness of someone who had been waiting in that chair for some time. I set the emerald on the table beside her. She picked it up with both hands, the way you picked up something you had believed you might not see again. She held it in the morning light that was coming through the window, thin and gray and washed from the night's rain. She didn't ask me how. She didn't ask me who.
Mr. Malone?
Mrs. Marchetti.
My husband gave me this on our 40th anniversary. We were standing in the garden. He said a stone this old had seen more of the world than either of us ever would. He said it deserved to live the rest of its years somewhere it would be appreciated. He was a complicated man, Mr. Malone. I always knew that. The things he was involved in, I did not ask, and he did not tell, and we were happy in the space between those two facts for 43 years.
He protected you.
We protected each other, in the ways that were available to us. It is what people do. Will there be trouble for the people involved?
Some of them, the ones who earned it.
And the young woman? The one who came to you on behalf of her father?
I looked at her. She knew. Of course she knew. 71 years in a complicated marriage and 4 decades of watching from the edges of things. She'd known about the microfilm, or suspected, or known enough to understand that the stone was more than a stone. She'll be all right.
Good. Her father and my husband, they were not good men in the simple sense, but they were loyal to the people they loved. In my experience, that is not a small thing, even if it is not enough. You should go home, Mr. Malone. You look like a man who has been awake for something longer than a night.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the stone.
I drove back to Spring Street in the thin morning, the rain finally done, the city wet and quiet in that particular way it got after a long storm, when the air was clean for the first hour before the day put it back the way it was. Vivian Cortez was going to be all right. Brody had his microfilm and 20 names he'd been chasing for a decade, and he needed her more than he needed a case against her. Dutch Hennessey was in custody, which was where Dutch eventually ended up, the law of averages being what it was. Tommy DeLuca was in a motel in Burbank that I didn't know the name of and didn't want to. And in a house in Hancock Park, a 42-carat emerald sat in its case in the morning light, green as deep water, old as trouble, finally home. I parked the car. I went upstairs. I looked at my desk and the bottle of rye and the 2 chairs and the filing cabinet with the stuck drawer. I sat down. I thought about Vivian Cortez walking into my office in the rain with her jade eyes and her secret, and about Elena Marchetti holding her husband's last gift in both hands in the gray morning, and about what the old woman had said, loyal to the people they loved, not a small thing, even if it is not enough. No, I thought, not a small thing. I poured myself a drink I'd earned. Outside, the city was waking up and going back to being what it was, which was complicated and mostly not my business and occasionally worth getting wet for. Just another morning in Los Angeles. Just another case.
This has been the Midnight Frequency. The studio goes dark now. Sleep well.